Jody Wilson-Raybould is a lawyer and advocate and a leader in British Columbia's First Nations. She served as the Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada, Minister of Veteran Affairs, and the Associate Minister of National Defence until her very much publicized resignation in 2019. Her new book, and it has got people talking, Indian in the Cabinet, was just released, and she is joining us now to talk about what she learned during her time in government. It is early where Jody is. We appreciate Jody joining us. Welcome to BT. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So many things, Jody. Let's start with the week that is here. National Day of Truth and Reconciliation is tomorrow. What's going through your head as we progress through the week here?
Well, I think that truth and reconciliation requires more than one day, but I'm pleased that the attention of this country is going to be on the tragic revelations of the mass graves at residential school, and I hope that people take pause tomorrow to remember the history of colonialism in this country, and that we have a long way to go, and it's going to require all of us to take action to create change.
Jody, you've been at the highest levels legally in this country. You know what goes on there and what's realistic or not. In terms of repercussions for some of these revelations we've seen and will see, unfortunately, does anything happen here? What can the government do?
Well, I think that there's a lot that the government can do in terms of the relationship between Indigenous peoples and non-Indigenous peoples, correcting our colonial past, moving beyond laws like the Indian Act that have subjugated Indigenous peoples for 150 plus years. We need to see political will within Parliament, within the Prime Minister's office, and Indigenous peoples have been asking for change for generations. And hopefully collectively with Canadians in support, we can make that change possible and create new laws and policies to enable Indigenous nations to rebuild within a stronger Canada and correct the historic injustices and recognize the tragedy of residential schools and move positively forward.
To people at home, I was planning on going through Jody's complete resume. We don't have the 3 hours it would take to go through what Jody has already done politically in her career. And representation is so important, as we've talked about throughout the week here, Jody. What do you think you have done? I know it's odd to speak of yourself in this way, forgive me. But what effect has your career had on young people in Indigenous communities across the country who one day would love to serve publicly?
Well, I would hope that it encourages young people, Indigenous peoples, marginalized individuals to get involved and to recognize that they belong around any table they want to sit around. I have been known to say I was the first Indigenous Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada, but I know I won't be the last. And one of the reasons why I wrote this book was to speak of my experience, to speak up and identify where there's challenges and where things can improve. I think we all have a responsibility to speak up and recognize that our voices matter. So I would encourage people to reach for the stars and follow their path and know that they have a role to play in society, each and every one of us.
Permission to move on and talk about the book? You want to do that?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Again, Indian in the Cabinet. This is on fire right now. This is all people are talking about politically in this country. And for those, again, a quick refresher, the SNC-Lavalin affair, the Trudeau government were found guilty of numerous ethics violations in the pressure that they put on Jody while she was in office in regards to that legal proceeding. Jody, I'm curious, as you saw the Prime Minister win again last week, what went through your head?
Well, I would say Canadians spoke and they delivered a minority government to Justin Trudeau. And that's significant in the sense, and I take it as a recognition that Canadians in giving a minority government want this government to work with other parties, to work with all members of Parliament in the House of Commons collectively. I know that when I was in the last Parliament, there were great gains that were made in addressing the reality of a COVID pandemic. And moving forward, I think it's incumbent upon all parliamentarians and the Prime Minister to work together to address major issues like Indigenous reconciliation, like climate change. And I'm hopeful that will happen.
One of the lines from the book that has a lot of people talking specifically is when you said to the Prime Minister, "I wish that I had never met you." What would your career have been like if you never met him?
Oh, well, I mean, it's a good question, and sometimes I sit back and I reflect about if I had taken a different path, what it would have looked like. That was a specific moment in time where I thought that and where I articulated that to the Prime Minister, and that's what I felt. But I want to say that I am so grateful to have been able to represent the people of Vancouver Granville for 6 years as their Member of Parliament, and to have been appointed the Minister of Justice and Attorney General was one of the greatest honors of my life. And if I had to do it all over again, I would have done the exact same thing. So I'm grateful for the opportunities that I've had, and I know that everything happens for a reason, and I'm in the place where I'm supposed to be.
Finally, Jody, I know you're not right now technically in federal politics, but one can argue you are as influential right now as you've ever been. Maybe I'm wrong, but some would argue that. Is Jody Wilson-Raybould done with federal politics in this country?
I'm not going to say that I'm never going to get back involved. I mean, never say never. I have many opportunities, and I'm grateful that are being presented to me right now. I am going to look where my voice and my public service, which I've been raised to do, can be most useful. And, maybe that might lead me back into Parliament at some point. But there are issues like Indigenous reconciliation and reform in the justice system, issues that I've spent a lifetime advocating for, and I'm going to continue to do that, and we'll see what the future holds.
Yep, never say never. Never go wrong with that answer. Never say never. Indian in the Cabinet is the book. Again, it is what everyone is talking about right now. Jody Wilson-Raybould. Jody, we really, especially this week, we really appreciate you coming by and waking up at a very early hour for us out in BC. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Take care. All right, coming up here on BT, you sound off. For a lot of parts of the country, school's about a month in, going back to the office, maybe about a month in. How's it been like for you? 1-866-267-3797. Feedback at breakfasttelevision.ca, at Breakfast TV on Twitter 24/7. It's National Coffee Day. How much coffee do we drink? That topic next. You're watching BT.